what the proper diagnosis means for human flourishing. Because whether we're Africans or not, we are all humans and we all need the same recipe for human flourishing. And it is economic freedom and access to affordable, reliable, abundant energy sources. Period. Done. That's it.
Friends, welcome to Prosper. I'm your host, Andreas Widmer, with my colleague, Rebecca Teddy. We're coming to you from the Entrepreneurship Center at Catholic University of America's Bush School of Business, and this is Prosper. 30 minutes of the wisdom you need to flourish both in life and in business. And boy, do we have a treat for you today. My dear friend Magatte Wade is joining us to continue our exploration of this season's theme, the role of enterprise in solving human problems.
Andreas and Magatte go way back, but first I'm going to do the formal introduction. Magatte Wade is the director of the Center for African Prosperity at Atlas Network, which is the leading organization of African free market think tanks. She was listed as a Forbes 20 Youngest Power Women in Africa. She's been named a Young Global Leader by the World Economic Forum and a TED Global Africa Fellow. Magatte is also the best-selling author of The Heart of a Cheetah and the host of The Magatte Wade Show. She's spoken at the United Nations, Aspen Institute, Harvard, Oxford, Stanford, MIT, Yale, and she's also got a wonderful TED Talk on the TED main stage. Her work has been featured in too many news outlets to name, and she's been a popular guest of both Jordan Peterson and Lex Friedman on their podcasts. So we're very honored to have her here on Prosper.
Yeah, this we could make this list as long as we wanted to make this here. But look, we go way back, and Magatte, you have this beautiful role of promoting free markets and overcoming poverty, the power of enterprise to tackle social issues. You're a sought-after speaker, a thought leader at most major conferences, events, and so on. But most of all, you are a beautiful soul, a real human being with sincerity and love for everybody. Welcome, my friend, to this podcast.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
We're going to hit you up with the same warm-up question we give to all our guests, Magatte, which is, what are you reading right now that's of interest?
The 1 and the 99. It's from Luke Burgess. It's right now it's still a manuscript. It's launching, I think, sometimes this summer, and it's very much a book that we all need in these times of AI. People no longer remembering that they have self-agency. You don't know anymore what it is that you think. What is your own self of who you are, and so look through many very personal stories and also many principles that come out of his research. He's able to help walk people through how to have a healthy relationship with their identity in communities. So I can't wait for this book to come out, and it's coming in very timely given where everything is at right now.
I think so too, and of course for everybody to know, Luke is on the Sioka Center team, and we are so proud that he's coming out this year with this book. And we usually do origin stories here with our guests, and I have to think back, Magatte, we met probably 20 years ago or so. I think you were still running Adina at the time, I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. And I was starstruck. You know why? When we met, I was starstruck because you, if I remember this, you got the largest venture capital investment for somebody with a product-based company. Isn't that true?
Yeah, basically we were the company started by an African based on a product that's from Africa. We are the ones who, a consumer product, we're the ones who, yes, have raised the largest amount. Yeah, and also the most nationally distributed in America as well.
Tell us about it, and how did you become an entrepreneur? And I mean, you're the head of a company now, your latest startup. But how did you become an entrepreneur, and what? And just I love what it actually was, because in a way it was you pleased yourself by creating the product that you wanted, didn't you?
Pretty much. Yeah, no, I mean, look, Andreas, I did not start the business thinking of myself, oh, I'm going to become a business person or an entrepreneur. It really did not cross my mind. What happened was that after having gone back home, so I obviously was born in Senegal, then raised in Germany, then France, and then eventually after business school, I moved to the US. And because of visa issues and everything, I was not illegal or anything like that. But you have to wait before you can go back. So it's been 4 years. By the time I've never left my country for so long. So it's been 4 years by the time I was able to go back that I haven't seen my country. And so when I went, I realized that this hibiscus drink that I grew up with as a child was disappearing because everybody who thought they were somebody, they would drink Western brands from, like we're talking Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Fanta, things like that. And then the people at the bottom of the pyramid would be drinking knockoff brands of those brands. And in between, our indigenous juices were being squeezed out. But in my case, what it meant, it was two big things. It was like, on one hand, I literally was, when I was brought a tray of various juices, when you go to somebody's home or to a restaurant or whatever, I'm seeing all of these other drinks, but I'm not seeing mine. And mine really, and for me, these brands, this drink is more than a drink. It's like, it's the juice of teranga. Teranga means hospitality. That is what us, the people of Senegal, are known for. So it's a part of our identity, cultural identity. So for me, not to see it on this tray means, oh my God, I am being erased culturally speaking. I'm losing very critical element of my cultural identity. And at the same time, the women who used to grow the hibiscus, which is the main ingredient for this drink, were losing their livelihoods. So leaving the countryside where they used to grow this, now packing themselves into cities where they become maids, treated very poorly, borderline like slaves, and some of them begging in the street, the kids next to them. So the cycle of poverty was just going deeper and deeper. So what I was watching was on one end the death of my culture, of elements of my culture I was so proud of, and on another end, poverty getting worse and worse. And then these women's children, grown children, or like young adult children, we're talking 18, 19, sometimes even 16, because they see that mom lost her livelihood. Now they are packing themselves into fishermen's boats trying to cross to Europe to find a job so they can send it back to mom at home. And most of the time the boat tips, capsizes. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? So I was so upset by the whole thing, and I could see how they were related, right? And so eventually I decided, look, criticize by creating. My father always said, I don't need your problems. Come up with solutions. That's all I care about. They don't have to be right. And so eventually, I like to say that entrepreneurs are those who criticize by creating, right? And so that's how I started a business. The only goal was the product we're gonna bring to the market was gonna be these juices, so we can bring it back, and we're gonna put all of these women back to work. And that's what I did. And I didn't understand. Yeah. So I didn't wake up and be like, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur or whatever. I just had a problem that really bothered me enough that I would lose my sleep over it. And then eventually I had to do something about it. And it turned out to be something that many other people wanted.
I love that. It's the story of so many entrepreneurs that I wanted to fix a problem. I wanted to do something. And, I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur until kind of after the fact, after so many steps. And the other thing is, Magatte, you hardly know me, but you came and guest lectured via Zoom in our class during COVID. And you used that expression, criticize by creating. And I latched onto it and I always give you credit, but I say it almost as often as you do because it's just a brilliant way of expressing what entrepreneurial alertness is. I love that
Exactly,
expression.
exactly. And I think beyond entrepreneurship, it's really it's a cardinal rule that I feel so many of us should go by, because just to say it, criticize by creating, it does something to you. It just flips your mind, and you no longer are a victim. You become an active, character of the journey. And so for me, it's very important. Every time I catch myself, because I'm not going to lie, sometimes I'm out there like complaining until the cows come home. But when the complaining becomes, painful enough, then you remind yourself, hey, what are you doing about this? And if you're not doing anything about it, maybe you should shut up. I'm sorry. Or have a little bit more compassion.
Interesting how you lived first in Senegal, and
Mhm,
then you went to Germany, I think,
mhm.
and then Paris. It was it Paris? Yeah.
It was in Chartres, where
Oh,
we
it's
have an
not. Oh,
800-year-old cathedral.
very
Mhm.
nice. And then to San Francisco.
Yeah. Via Columbus, Indiana, where I was there for 9 months or so.
Talk about you couldn't choose a better culture shock from from one place
From
to
one
the
thing to
next.
the next.
And again, I had no idea. For me, Andres, and this is why I recommend people to travel and to live as many in real life experiences as possible, because nothing beats it. And in my case, I when I was going from Senegal to Europe, first of all, it was not my choice, right? This was just something that happened. My parents were economic migrants, and eventually, when it worked out for them, they called me to be reunited with them. So I left. I didn't notice what was going on except having to leave my beloved grandma behind. But arrived in Germany, and there my grandma had told me before I left. She said, "Listen, baby, when you get there, it's gonna be a bunch of people who don't look like you, um, a bunch of people who don't speak the same language as you do, and all of these little kids are going to school, and you've never been to school." But she said, "But the fact that they look different from you is just a different skin color, and at the end of the day, it is still human skin. You're human, so don't be phased out by that." And then she said, even the different language they speak, it's still a language spoken by humans. So if they can speak it, surely you can pick up on it as well. And going to school is what little humans do. You're a little human, you'll be fine. And so I went there, and everything grandma said was true. So I'm thinking the next thing she said is probably going to be true. And she said, and whatever they do, you can do the same, if not better. So I just figured, yeah, grandma's right. And I think, you see, when you don't have these grievances or this weird crap in the back of your mind, it just allows you to move through things without being encumbered by fear or, wondering if people are going to let you or not. So I just lived my life. And then eventually time came to move to France, same thing. Moved to France. I could see the difference very much in the culture. But again, I just went with the flow, always anchored in the belief that I had in myself, which was instilled very early in me by my grandmother. My grandma had a very Montessori style type of education with me, but it turns out that way of child rearing was in my culture way before Maria Montessori ever existed. I come from a culture where children actually do have rights. You speak to them as grown-ups. I mean, it's the modern Africans that really have lost track of that. They really have lost track of that part of our background. But in any case, so I in France I did my thing as well, and then I moved to the US. For me, when I moved to Columbus, Indiana, I was in America. For you have to understand, for us, America is America is America. So I went there. That's when I first learned that I didn't know how to speak American, but I was speaking actually British. That's what I learned. So I really had to first adjust the language, the accent a little bit. I still have some, but and then from there, later, only later, I learned how different the Midwest was from the rest of America, because I went on from there to eventually live on the two coast, and then today I'm living in Austin. So you could say that, having lived in San Francisco, Austin, and now New York, and now Austin, I mean, I have done the countries that basically, you know how that works. But in any case, that's later when I went to California. Looking back and reflecting back, I was very fortunate that I had learned from the heart of America what it is in the end to truly be American. And in the heart of America, what I had learned was the American the values that, in retrospect, I'm finding really have helped America. And it has to do with this attachment to faith. Like I mean, I was with people of deep faith. My host family was this very devoted Christian family, right? That opened their doors, opened their arms, opened their hearts for me, supported me all the way through, from sponsoring me for my H-1B visas, being my guarantors on my first lease, all of that stuff. I never flinched once. And then, so people who have a strong attachment and understanding of family, right? As well as just hardworking people, And so I really got that little bug from living with them and being with them. And to this day, they really are. I call them my first family, my first American family. And so yeah, obviously later I went to San Francisco. There, I just was very excited about now what I could put a finger on, called entrepreneurship, and really understanding what I call the magic of entrepreneurship and understanding its ecosystem. So Andreas, for me, I go through life not being like, oh my God, culture shock, but it's always like, And I think I was very lucky because the way my progression happened in life is I feel like my roots were planted very deep from very early on. And that's how you realize that if your roots are deep, the deeper they are, and then the more you can reach for the skies without losing yourself. And I think in retrospect, that's what I'm noticing. And none of it I planned for. It was just God doing this, giving me the parents He gave me and the people He put on my path, and eventually, one thing leading to another. Here we are. But I gained pretty much from everywhere I have been, and from every human interaction I had had, whether good or bad. So it is in the end how it works.
I do think that you're one of the most grounded people I know. Um, I wonder, but what's so interesting is that you got around, and so you saw so many different aspects of the current world history, like in Germany and France, and then across the United States. But you were also from Senegal, and did you? At what point did you start? Like your grandma prepared you for a place of like saying you're coming from a great place, and you're just going to go to see different people. At what point did you turn around and say, "Wow, something's wrong here"? Where the opportunities and the prosperity isn't being created where I come from. And was that a process, or was there a aha moment, or
I can point to when something deep got triggered in my being. And that was right around age 7 when I moved from Senegal to Europe. That's when my parents had called for me to be reunited with them. At that point, my parents first went to France and later went to Germany. But by the time I got reunited with them, they were in Germany. And later they would be going back to France, but with me this time. And so I remember that when I arrived in Germany, I mean, what I remember the most out of that whole episode, time of my life, was obviously the extreme pain that I still feel when I think about having had to leave my grandma. That was just one of the most traumatic events of my life, and it's one that really, really made me angry for the longest time. For the longest time, I asked myself, why is it that I had to leave my grandma? And it just didn't feel, it made no sense, and it was not fair, and it was not right. But I didn't know why that was the case. Why do I have to be separated? Why do I have to go? Why, if I'm going to be with my parents, I have to not be with my grandma? And why, if I'm going to be with her, I can't be with them? That made no sense. Um, but anyway, I arrive in Germany, and then I look around, and I'm seeing, and I'm like, oh, it was so shocking. I look, and the first I was just caught with this thinking of how come they have this and we don't? And really, all I was talking about at that point was how come back home, when my grandma says, "My God, time for your shower," I knew that I had a good 45 minutes to an hour to go play and fool around, because I knew that my grandma is going to have to get a stove of coal going, fan it to death, put a pot of water on it, wait for it to boil. Then we would put it in a bigger bucket, mix it with colder water so it's safe for skin temperature for me. And then somebody stronger than her would have to drag it to the shower area. There, with a smaller plastic pot, I would, take back and forth from a big bucket. And that's what shower meant. And it was some 45 minutes to an hour later. But here in Germany, my mom says, "My God, it's time for your shower." And I'm like, I'm looking around, and it's like, it's cold out. And it's just like thinking, "Lady, I'm just not getting butt naked in this weather. Where's the bucket of warm water?" And then she's like, "Come on, you silly, just jump in." And so I jump in this shower stall. I turn the knobs around, and turns out this water is coming down. Turns out you can control the temperature and even the pressure. And I'm just like, I am really convinced that somebody's playing a bad case of juju on me. I mean, literally. My first reaction was like, oh, take a step back and look around the walls and wondering, where is this person hiding? How are they hiding? What's going on? How is this working? I mean, coming from a non-plumbed home, right? No running water, all of that, and I'm thinking to myself, huh? And so we didn't have heating, no AC, nothing like that. You get super hot in the summer, and because we're coastal, it gets sometimes very cold in the winter, and then you get like a little pot of incense going, which mostly the job of it is to help warm you up. But these coals is pretty much frying your lungs, and indoor air pollution. People don't think about it, but we do this because we need to warm ourselves up. And so, in any case, I'm seeing this. I'm thinking to myself, "You gotta be kidding me, right?" And then it was like that about the shower. It was like that about the grocery store where there was more types of breads and apples than my little brain could count. It was like that about the roads, the paved roads, where back home it was never paved and my feet were always dusty. I would always have to wash back and forth when I come in. And it was just so bizarre. I couldn't understand the discrepancy between this. I didn't know the words back then, but I sensed it. I felt it. It felt like, how come life feels so easy here? And back home, it's like, huh? So, and I was obsessed. I needed to know because the difference was too big. And eventually, so my question went from how come they have this and we don't, to how come some countries like mine and so many in Africa are poor while others are rich. So that's pretty much when that question started in my mind, Andreas, and I needed to get it answered. And I never let go of the question. It was obsessive. And eventually, the pursuit to the response to that question is the reason why I eventually became very serious about economics. As I learned, and again, I didn't start knowing about all of these ideas because I read Hayek or I read Friedman or I read any other topical classics. It's just my own life journey made me to see the discrepancies later when I became an entrepreneur in Africa trying to do business and comparing it to trying to do business to doing business between in America versus,
You were
yeah, I
living
was
it.
living it. And then when I saw the discrepancy in what would call the ease of doing business between the two places, I first thought, oh, it's because we're poor that it's so hard to do business in my country, and it's because we're rich that it's so easy to do business in rich nations. Well, the minute you say that, you think to yourself, wait a second, you're poor because you don't have enough money. You don't have enough money because you don't have a source of income. Our source of income for most of us is a job. Where do jobs come from? The private sector, businesses. Well, do we really believe that businesses happen in a vacuum? Do we really believe we're going to have as many businesses being created, therefore jobs and income being created in a place that makes it easy, like in rich nation, to do business, the same as in a place that makes it super hard, like in my country, to do business? I think not. And so when I saw that, I'm like thinking, okay, is my country just like a unique situation? And it was through all of these questions that eventually I started to look at the evidence, and the empirical evidence matched almost data for data. What is it that I was living as a human being, trying to do business and doing business because I wanted to create jobs and save my culture? And so when I discovered that, and then eventually it became the answer to my question came. Little 7-year-old Magatte finally had a question, has her answer. Africa is not poor because of racism, colonialism, slavery, natural resources being sold, laziness, low IQ. These are all the things that most people come up with, by the way, as to why Africa is poor. No, Africa is not poor because of any of those things. Africa is poor because it happens to be the most over-regulated region in the world. And that made sense. So poverty is solved by prosperity, not poverty alleviation. Poverty is solved by prosperity. Prosperity is built by entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs need an enabling business environment.
This is hot stuff. Let me pause you right there just for a quick break, and then we're going to come back and drill down even deeper into that because
Sure.
that is powerful stuff. And I have a question for you about it. But first, quick little break. If you're enjoying this podcast, friends, then we ask you to be sure to like and subscribe in your favorite podcast app. And also make sure to spread the word, tell people about it, maybe tell another friend in business about it. And we'd also like to invite you to our upcoming April 17th, 2026 Family Business Consortium meeting. It's our spring meeting. You can go to familybusinessconsortium.org or to learn more, or we'll also can put the link in our show notes. But it's an opportunity to bring the heads of family businesses together on our beautiful campus in Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C., where there's also an online option. But we'd love to see you there, and check the show notes to find out more.
Welcome back to Prosper, everyone, and to our conversation with Magatte Wade, who's almost a one-woman force helping Africa rise in the right way. And before we left, we just heard you with this impassioned argument of your, or lesson of your leaving Senegal and your grandma and going to Germany, France, and then to the United States. I think one of the protagonists, one of the heroes in me in hearing your story, and I've heard you over the years. Your grandma is probably the wisest woman in this. What do you call grandma in Senegalese?
I call her mom, mom.
So mom, she has a wait, how she saw that, like she
She
knew this
almost
before.
inoculated you against the
Yeah,
poison
she knew
of
this
your
before
no.
you even left. What do you say to that? Where did she get this?
I think my grandma was just my grandma was, again, we had a very unique relationship, her and I think it had to do with the fact that, you know, I was my parents' oldest, and she could see that out of all of her grandkids, and also I think my parents were her among her favorite kids. You know how parents are; there's always like this favorite one, and it happened to be that I was the one who did not have her parents. So I think she took it upon herself really to go the extra mile with me, and her and I, and again, it's just the way she believed in child rearing. We always had conversations. I would cause trouble left and right, and my grandma would defend me in front of everybody else. But then we go in behind closed doors, and then she'll sit me down and be like, "I defended you out there, but what's going on?" And so I would have to come clean. And I just, with her, that's the thing. I didn't, no need to lie or anything like that. I would just say the truth straight out, and I would say, and then she would ask me, why did you do that, or why not this, or whatever, and I would explain to her. And it was so funny because sometimes she would like, well, you know what, actually I think you were right, you did right actually, or whatever. Sometimes we just agree to disagree, and oftentimes it was me saying, grandma, I'm sorry, you were right, and I'll think about it next time. I don't promise I'll be better. I don't promise I will have it fixed, but I will think about it, and hopefully, So we had very much this relationship. I slept in her bed, all of that stuff. So when people looked at us, they say they saw friends, they saw friends, and I think in her mind, it was very important that I never felt less than. And I think that whole thing started probably with my parents not being there. I think my grandmother always started with me not feeling like less than, or I was missing something compared to other kids because my parents were not there. So I think she was very intentional about making sure that I never feel sorry for myself, or that I never feel like I've been cheated out by life or anything like that. So that's why even when it was time to leave and I dared to say it's not fair, I remember she was not happy about me using those words. And yeah, oh yeah. So she's just like, we don't talk like that. There's nothing about being fair. Life is not fair, and you always have it better than, there's always someone, but you have it better than, and there is always somebody that's better off than you. There's always going to be that. So if you want to start focusing on the nonsense, go for it. So anyway, so I think that's pretty much what happened, and it just carried on in a way.
It's
So
so powerful the way she trained your mindset. I want to ask you a question because I've heard you say, so because I want to get to the question of regulation and like how can we change the mentality of, poverty aid and move towards a prosperity mentality. But I want to ask you in a way kind of almost a psychological question, which is I've heard you talk about how maybe it didn't affect you thanks to your grandmother because you were inoculated, but sometimes people in your similar condition of moving from a poor country to a wealthy one actually can internalize a sense of maybe there is something wrong with us. Like why did these countries have this? And that's always struck me as just because we tend to think about poverty only in the terms of material terms, like as you said, life is easier as opposed to harder. But what also breaks my heart is the idea of any little girl, thinking that she's somehow not good enough, that she doesn't understand that she's an equal child of God with the same capacities and value as everybody else, and that the deep way that the way we have of talking about poverty actually does damage, I think, to the psychology of people that we imagine are on the
yeah,
receiving
yeah.
end.
No, and I agree. And I think this is very true. People mix everything up in a way. And I see it the other way around. I see people who are poverty stricken trying to tell themselves that they're not poor economically because, oh, look, I'm rich with all the other things. And if you guys think it's just material. So to me, it shouldn't be, we might need to be clear sometime about what we're talking about. I think when you live in abject poverty, material abject poverty, that is a problem, and we should tackle it and deal with it. But at the same time, I think it is important for people to remember that ultimately the richest riches are what I call virtue and character. And and it's not even so much about the relationships you have with other people or anything like that, but it really starts with you. It's like, do you have virtue and character at the end of the day? And if you have that, really, you've got the building blocks for what you need next, and you're rich plenty. But it's a different form. So for me, I remember that even coming from when you're in this very religious environment, my father, he always said to us, he said, you know this whole praying and all of that, so many people pray, and the minute they're done with a prayer, they're out there doing things that the prayers were telling them, you shall not do this. And my father always told us, he said, God will always judge us by the content of our hearts. And that to me, and actually, that always put me at ease and at peace with the idea of God. Because that I could live with. I could live with a God that's telling me, I see straight through your heart and your intentions. And as long as your intentions are good ones and you're trying hard, I will not turn my back on you. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to make mistakes or anything like that. But as long as God could see that my intentions, and I was not doing bad things knowingly, then He would be with me. So we were raised very early on with this idea of no matter what, and talking about Luke Burgess's book, 1 to 99. It's that to me resonates. It's who are you? It's my father always, and we grew up with this as well, where I remember coming home sometimes, and because I come from a very my parents are very, like, they have their own views of the world, and they raised us in a certain way. I was my father's, like, apple of his eye and everything. But I remember sometimes coming back from school and be like, well, so and so has a right to do this or whatever, and my parents are like, they are them and we are we. And so I think having this sense of who you are, and not even that, even among brothers and sisters, I am Magatte. My sister is her, my brother is him, and we're each different from each other, and it is totally fine. So I think for me, the ultimate richness is who are you? Who are you? What do you have? Do you have virtue and character? And are you trying to work on that thing? Are you always trying to be the better version of yourself yesterday than you will, and also that you will be tomorrow? And so for me, that's really what richness really means. Like, am I with myself or have I lost myself? Am I true to myself or am I not? And I know that in life I could have gone much further than I have gotten so far, if only I was willing to pander. But I don't know how to pander. It's just not part of who I am, and it's okay. But I think to me that's the real richness. At the end of the day, to be able to say that I live my life as Magatte Wade, whoever the hell that was meant to be, it's up to me to find out.
I can attest to that. That's what I mean by you being grounded. You're people don't know what to do with make of you. Think about this, you listeners. So Magatte has been featured at Davos. She has a very popular TED talk. She was on Jordan Peterson and probably 20 other major podcasts where people basically just look at her and go like, "What?" And it's the difficult thing is that you can't fool Magatte because on the one hand she knows who she is, but on the other hand, and that's what I want to talk to you a bit about, or have you talk about. So Magatte is an entrepreneur. She had this previous company. Now it's Tiosan. Is that, do I pronounce it
Yeah,
correctly?
Chosan.
And what she does there, it's she knows what she's talking about. She has a company in Tanzania, and they're producing there. And
Senegal.
I know some of the stories
Senegal.
sorry, Senegal, and I know some of the stories like how even getting right packaging it takes forever, and licenses to do certain things. And so, and yet you also had a company in San Francisco and probably in Texas now, which are the headquarters where you're at. You can't fool her to say, well, this is how it is in Africa and this is how it is in the US, and people are different and everything, because you know how it is, because you're in both places. What do you make of this? I presume that people don't have bad intentions. Like if you go to Davos and you talk to people who do this poverty fighting stuff, which some of it you criticize, they don't have a bad intention. At the same time, if you talk to some of the bureaucrats in Senegal, I presume they don't have a bad intention. How do you talk to them, and what's your message there, and what needs to change?
Yeah, no, the message is exactly what we're talking about here. When I discovered when I discovered the reason to my question, the question was, why are some countries like mine poor and others are rich? When I discovered that it had to do that this and I have this other formula that I came up with over the years, that human flourishing happens when entrepreneurs are free to enterprise. And for entrepreneurs to be free to enterprise, because they're the ones who create everything around us, all of that, they need two key ingredients. One is economic freedom, and the other one is access to affordable, reliable, abundant energy sources. You provide people with that, get out of the way, they do the magic. Anywhere, everywhere, doesn't matter how they started out culturally, whatever, it's just going to happen. And those two happen to be the two things that African nations lack the most of, right? Economic freedom, and where most of our countries are energy poor, right? And so, how do you expect us to get there? But the problem we have with Africa is that so few people have a correct diagnosis as to why Africa is the poorest region in the world to this day. I promise you, after this call, or anybody listening, try this for me, do it, and take notes. Ask the next 100 people you meet, or 25, however many you can go through, and ask them, why is Africa poor? Everybody's going to have an answer for you. But I promise you, you're going to hear them. You're going to hear, they're low IQ, they're lazy, they're always fighting, colonialism, slavery, racism, natural resources being stolen from them. Oh, you hear everything. I promise you, you're not going to have one person tell you Africa is the poorest region in the world, because it is the region in the world that provides the least freedom to its entrepreneurs to enterprise. No one will say that to you. And as long as that's the case, we will remain where we are, meaning those who want to work on helping Africa, how can you bring up the right solution if you got the wrong diagnosis? If you think it's a matter of just colonialism, then you're going to start to work on stupid programs about, these poor people have been taken advantage of. If you think it's lack of access to clean water, then you focus on bringing clean water. If you think it's malnutrition, then you focus on bringing us food. And if you think that, it's just because we're dealt a bad hand, and, it's just never going to happen for us, we have done them so wrong, and now we need to aid them, like we need to send foreign aid. So that's what people are working on. Everybody's working on that. And then what the problem is a diagnosis. When people think they know a diagnosis, then it becomes self-selection. When your diagnosis is all of these pity reasons, or all of these reasons where you think there's something intrinsically wrong about Africans, then you're basically attracting people who believe in pity crap, right? And so naturally, because the real builders are not interested in these scenes, they're just like, we want to be where we know we can create value for value and all of that stuff. So it attracts a certain type of people, right? The whole field starts to attract a certain type of people, which we have explained very well with Andreas in a documentary called Poverty Inc., right? And so anywhere from the true believers that they're doing something right but are profoundly misguided, even though they're very well intentioned, like we're saying, all the way to the scammers. Flat out scammers. This is an industry. Money is flowing in between. Hey, which part of it can we take? Right? With especially with all of these nonprofits or these consulting businesses that are supposed to be in the aid business. I mean, they're the ones filling their pockets. So now you have an entire industry that is motivated to not be destroyed. So they're not incentivized for the poverty to stop, because if it stops, they all go home. So now you have created so much noise around all of this. African people are also hearing all of this nonsense. There's too many people too eager to tell them that they're just the victims of capitalism and the West. And they just take it, just easily. And then before you know it, after 60 years of this, since the so-called independences, we are glued. We're in America. We're like swimming through molasses, the molasses of all of these lies and all of this misdiagnosis about why Africa is poor. And there's so much noise. No one is getting the signal. So 80%, and I'm being generous, of people are spending 80% of our resources, all resources, money, time, focusing on the symptoms of poverty rather than dealing with the root cause, which is poverty. And this is the most insane thing I've ever seen. And so people like me, we're swimming against the current, because what do you do about all of this? First, it starts with awareness. you can't solve something you're not aware of. So the big job right now is to change this story. And so that's why someone like Andreas has been, for me, a fellow traveler of a journey. And I feel like he's known these things before I did. And it's also thanks to people like him, thanks to people like my husband, who has really opened my eyes to, because they started connecting the dots a long time ago through their own work. And so it's to see people like them who are very solid in this diagnosis and trying to take it to the next level. So right now, what we have to do is we have to attract an entire new cohort of people who are wanting to be partners with Africa and become partners with us along the lines of what the only true solution is going to be, which is it's going to be about value creation. It's going to be about entrepreneurship, and understand that, yes, when you understand that, now some people get excited about, oh, okay, let us just finance entrepreneurship. So we're going to finance some businesses. We're going to do capacity building. We're going to train some women on how to do marketing. We're going to train some people on how to do finance and all of that. I'm like, all of that is great. But if the underlying environment does not change, all of this is wasted.
It just becomes a higher form of I find this mentality in our students that you can make the point to them that you can talk about the problem of crowding, for example, and no farmer can compete with free grain, and so there's a limit to how much it helps in an emergency situation, and then you really have to stop in order to allow the people to rise. And all of that jobs training stuff, it's just the same mentality, but now a higher order of good, right? But it's still here, we give you the free stuff instead of letting you rise.
Right.
You've written a whole book about this, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
Heart of a Cheetah. Tell us about the book.
Yeah, The Heart of a Cheetah, how we've been lied to about African poverty and what it means for human flourishing. And again, I'm going back to, in a way, this mixed diagnosis that has turned into a bunch of lies about why Africa is still poor, right? And also what the proper diagnosis means for human flourishing. Because whether we're Africans or not, we are all humans and we all need the same recipe for human flourishing. And it is economic freedom and access to affordable, reliable, abundant energy sources. Period. Done. That's it. And so the book is about trying to dispel the biggest myths around why Africa is poor and then walk people through towards the right diagnosis and also offer solutions. In my mind, the most ultimate solution right now is a solution that would help all, it would be the rising tide, helping all boats lift. And that has to do with tackling the mother of all of these problems, which is governance. And we have to get to a point where we can create these areas within the continent. And the best way to go about it is to look at how it's worked everywhere else. Hong Kong, Dubai, Singapore, even China. So China, the Chinese miracle of lifting 800 million people out of poverty in a record time happens thanks to these special economic zones, SEZs, which are undeniably among the most free market zones in the world. And Singapore is just like that as well. Dubai is a constellation of 31 special economic zones. People don't realize that. Hong Kong did the same thing. And then you have a lot of the Asian tigers who actually went after the same type of remedy. And the remedy, again, is do the reforms so that you have a world-class business environment for your entrepreneurs. So unless and until we bring this to Africa, we're going to be left with taking scraps. And so a lot of my work has been about promoting this solution and talking to the leaders in Africa about this and talking to and my goal and my strategy with Africans themselves, ordinary Africans, has been to specifically focus on women and young people. Women and young people change societies in Africa. No offense to the men, but it's just the way it's been going on. So I focus on, because if for me, this young person who is 22, or 25, but before I hired him, before my husband and I, for example, hired this young Eswatini person based in Eswatini who has a math degree, before we hired him for our virtual school, these young people were sitting at home raising chicken. Do you know what he or she could have done with a math degree in America? You would be working in a hedge fund firm. You would be working in any of these AI companies, any of these software companies. I mean, math is in great demand, will be for a long, long time, especially with the coming of AI. I mean, math is as solid as it gets. But these kids are sitting home raising chicken to feed themselves. And so for me, so if this kid understands that that condition of his or hers is connected tightly to the lack of economic freedom in his or her country, and if this mom who I'm talking to and her tears are still wet on her chin because she's still mourning the loss of her child who tried to go to Europe and maybe the body dropped from a plane because he thought it would be a good idea to hide in landing gear, or mom who knows her child is stuck somewhere in Libya and is about to be sold as a slave because this kid was on his way to Europe to find a job and they get stuck in Libya and Libya has these deals with European countries. If I get these moms to understand the relationship between their child dying or dead or at risk, if I can help her connect the dots between that, which is very true and visceral to her, and the lack of economic freedom, then we win. Because what's going to happen is these people, these young people, and these women are going to next, there is an election, they're going to be the first one to be like, I'm not going to vote for you because I'm no longer asking about you to reduce the price of staple foods in order for me to vote for you. Forget that. Forget that crap. I should not have to wait for the price to go down to afford it. I should have plenty of money in my pocket to choose whatever I want to buy. And so what I'm asking you, Mr. Politician, is please, are you going to make us one of the best business environments in the world or not? That's all I want to hear. If you talk to me about that, you'll get my vote. If not, bye. When we get to that, or we get to a critical, so you see, we have to push from both sides because you never know who's going to come first. Because right now, if you do all the work with the politicians and the policymakers, some of them are the first one to say to you, lady, I'm happy to do this. I know what you mean. But trust me, if I go out there, I'm talking about business environment and everything, they're going to throw rotten tomatoes at me because they're like, who cares about this crap, you know? And I've heard some women say to me, and some people, Africans, say, why should I care about business environment? That's for rich multinationals. Has nothing to do with me. But that needs to change.
That's so powerful.
And then in the industry as well, and then from those who want to help us, what do I have in the Western world? As if they all drank the same Kool-Aid, they're all anti-capitalist. They're all, for the most part, anti-free markets. So
That's Magatte right there.
yeah, I mean, it's just like, it's so crazy. And I'm just like, you can't be the one who's going to support me here because you're against the very, remedy I need.
Magatte, you're the worst nightmare for these conventions when they let you loose in the room. I always laugh to say they have no idea. They're going to invite you. They have no idea what's going to happen. And there's no way controlling of what you're going to say.
But it's
Just
so
beautiful.
important, and it's so important to to get through. And even in the Western wealthy nations, we're starting to to drink the same
Exactly.
Kool-Aid, as
Yeah.
you say.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is important. Magatte, how can people contact you? How can they support you?
Yeah, I think the best way to contact me, I'm on all social media. My handle is very easy. It's Magatte W, so MAGATTEW, very easy. YouTube, X, as well as Instagram and Facebook. And then, yeah, so reach out to me there, send me DMs. We also have a school in Senegal that is all about entrepreneurial education. And so there, what we do is we not only teach kids, we're preparing them to be 21st century active members of society. So talking about teaching them critical thinking, independent thinking, especially in an age of AI, where I think those who are going to win are going to be those who still remember and are exercising their agency, right? And using the machine just as a tool and not, let the machine become their surrogate brain and who knows what else. So, and at the same time, we're very big on making sure that these kids from age 2.5, 3 start from a very simple evidence and facts of life to understand very viscerally the meaning of the free market, the meaning of how to freely exchange with one another works, and basically also focusing on the concept of virtue and character with them. So yeah, so in our school we're trying to foster 21st century people who are going to do very well in the 21st century and build the world that we forgot that we could and should build. Yeah. So support our school. Go to tiosanacademy.org. Tiosanacademy.org. You can make a donation there for the school. We'll be happy.
I do think this could be will be, please God, the century of Africa coming up. Magatte, you're a giant. It's amazing. I'm in awe at your intellect. You're a model entrepreneur, and you have the heart of all of Africa. It's beautiful to have you here. Thank you for gifting us this.
Oh, and I wanted to add one more thing, Andreas, is just for your for the audience listening, how they can help. All the prayers would be much needed and appreciated for health, longevity, and the courage to continue doing the work that I do. And may God grant us the ability to have even the slightest impact on the continent.
Amen.
Amen.
And thank you, listeners, for spending this quick 40, probably not 40 anymore, 40 minutes with us. Take care, and until next time, in your spirit and your business, we hope you prosper.